The year is 1692. I set out on the 3rd day of April, going first eastward, and intend to take what I think I may honestly call a circuit in the very letter of it, for I intend to go down by the coast of the Thames, through the marshes or hundreds, on the south side of the county of Essex, till I come to Malden, Colchester, and Harwich, thence continuing on the coast of Suffolk to Yarmouth. And while I travel, I will write. I have just had my novel published, Robinson Crusoe, finished at last, and well received, I might add. I have another in mind, Moll Flanders, based on a woman I used to know. She is gone now, a sad demise, but an interesting history. I intend travelling alone, but my brother wished to accompany me. He is restless since he retired from his business, and his children all grown up. He wanted me to take over his warehouse, but I had other plans. I have at last become a writer of pamphlets and essays, a writer of articles and papers, and a writer of novels.
Just as well, since all your sallies into trade have lost money. And I can no longer afford to bail you out now that you have a wife and so many children.
I married Mary 10 years ago, for her dowry as much as for her looks, I must admit. And children came thick and fast. 8 now, I think. I had bad luck.
You had bad judgment. Cows, bricks, hosiery, and diving bell.
The diving bells could have worked out. There are many wrecks out there with sunken cargo just ripe for the taking. We had insufficient capital, that was all.
And civets?
The civets were an admirable idea. They just did not produce the required income quick enough.
Oh, what do you know of producing perfume from such creatures? And the civet farms had to be taken to pay your debts.
My debts, yes. I suffer greatly from my debts. The dowry is long gone, and I have been imprisoned at times, I must admit. But I think now I am a published writer, my financial situation will ease.
And do not think you will make enough from your novels. That is but a hobby.
My brother has always been careful of money, and a scorner of the written arts as a way of making it.
Now, do you have victuals for this journey? I think I will go and purchase some.
There is a good stall across the road, very good pies.
Then it is pies I will purchase.
And some small beer if they have it. It is now 20 years since that terrible plague year. A year when up to 200,000 people died within the country. I may have misled you with my Journal of the Plague Year. Although written in the first person, I was but a child at the time. My journal was based on eyewitness accounts from those who were there, taken down by me later. But it is true, nonetheless. Some thought that pestilence would never end. But as the year waned, one way or another the numbers started to fall off. Some said it was the winter air, some the finger of God, for what else could put a stop to such dreadful disease? Not the quacks, that was for sure. But was there much more comfort in religion? Many priests called on the people to mend their ways and to pray. But when households still died, they would say they did not pray enough. Or, it's the will of God. Yet in the end, the plague did leave us, and as yet has not returned. But there is still the question of why and how. The people returning were sure to fumigate their houses, some with burning, sweet-smelling plants, some with smoke and gunpowder, which did indeed cleanse the house to the extent it burnt it to ashes. And of course, in 9 months, the whole of London was so purged. In Cripplegate, where I and my brother were then living, only our house and our neighbours' was left standing after the Great Fire. And when the capital was rebuilt, there was, of course, many improvements made. The street plan remained relatively unchanged, but streets were widened, pavements were created, open sewers abolished, wooden buildings and overhanging gables forbidden, and the design and construction of buildings controlled. The use of brick or stone was mandatory, and many gracious buildings were constructed. Not only was the capital rejuvenated, but it became a healthier environment in which to live.
What could it have been but the hand of God?
My brother has become quite religious in his old age.
There was no end to the suffering, especially for the poor. If the pestilence had gone on for another few weeks, no one would have been left alive. Men everywhere had fallen into despair, and hearts failed for fear. But at that very moment, when vain was the hand of man, it pleased God to cause the fury to abate.
I must say, it was almost impossible to express the change in the populace when the weekly bills came out and deaths had fallen by 2,000 in one day. And as the month of November went on, physics reported patients, even with plague, were now getting better. The severity of the illness greatly decreased, and the recovery was much less painful than before.
There were no new medicines, no new treatments. I tell you, it was the hand of God. The pestilence that walked in darkness, and the destruction that wasteth at noonday.
That is a biblical quotation.
Nothing else could have stopped it.
The important point was that whatever the cause, it left. There was an end to it, and life began to return to normal. The court moved back to London by Christmas, businesses opened up again, and strangers once more gave salutations to each other in the streets.
I still put it down to God.
You can if it makes you happy. Did you get the pies?
Yes, a mutton and a caper.
Good. Now, let us consider our route for our journey.
Where do you have in mind?
Colchester is an ancient corporation. The town is large, very populous, the streets fair and beautiful. It still mourns in the ruins of civil war, during which, or rather, after the heat of the war was over, it suffered a severe siege. But then there is Harwich.
Surely there is nothing much in Harwich.
'Tis enough that the harbour, which is one of the best and securest in England, is covered at the entrance by a strong fort and a battery of guns to the seaward. The fort is on the Suffolk side of the bay. It is now so firm that nothing of storms nor high tides can affect it. Two rivers empty themselves here, the Store from Manningtree and the Orwell from Ipswich.
I have heard that Ipswich has a commodious harbour. It has been fortified with ditches and a rampart, has great trade and is very populous, being adorned with 14 churches and large private buildings.
It is true, but it is thinly inhabited in comparison. There are hardly any people to be seen there.
I have heard that he who thinks fit to look into the churches and meeting houses of a Sunday will find very great numbers of people there. And if he thinks fit to look into the market and the great shambles, it's called Cardinal Wolsey's butchery, see how it is furnished with meat, and the rest of the market with provisions, he must acknowledge that it is not for a few people that all these things are provided.
Well, then maybe we should visit Ipswich too.
Draw up a route map for us then while I see to the provisions, for I am determined that we should not go hungry, and I fear that inns may be scarce on the route.
Will not your God provide, as he did during the plague year?
Do not be facetious, brother. I may repent my willingness to be your travelling companion. Now, look to the map.
In spite of our differences, I am fond of my brother, and would not want him to turn back at this time. And I think that whatever the reason, We should all be grateful who came to the end of that plague time and stayed alive. It was the strangest of times to have lived through, and many did not survive it, or survived to be fearful like my brother, or never recovered their senses or their courage. But I know I will always be the better for that experience, and remember how it made me into the writer I am today. A dreadful plague in London was in the year 65, which swept 100,000 souls away, yet I, alive. My name is Daniel Defoe, and this is my journal of the plague year.